When I first came into the business and my father sent me up here to learn how to cut, all I did was stand right here at the cutting table and watch this guy. I learned this business in the old-fashioned way from the ground up. My father started me literally sweeping the floors. Went through every single department, getting a feel for each operation and why it was being done. From Harry, I learned how to cut a glove. I wouldn't say I was a proficient glove cutter. If I cut 2-3 pairs a day, it was a lot. But I learned the rudimentary principles. Right, Harry? A demanding teacher, this fellow. When he shows you how to do something, he goes all the way. Learning from Harry almost made me yearn for my old man. First day I came up here, Harry set me straight. He told me that down where he lived, boys could come to his door and say, "Could you teach me to be a glove cutter?" And he would tell them, "You've got to pay me $15,000 first because that's how much time and leather you're going to destroy till you get to the point where you can make the minimum wage." I watched him for a full 2 months before he let me anywhere near a hide. An average table cutter will cut 3.5 dozen a day. A good fast table cutter will cut 5 dozen a day. Harry was cutting 5.5 dozen a day. "You think I'm good?" he told me. "You should have seen my dad." Then he told me about his father and the tall man from Barnum and Bailey. "Remember Harry?" Harry nodded. When the Barnum and Bailey Circus came to Newark, this is 1917, 1918, Harry nodded again without stopping his work. Well, they came to town, and they had a tall man approaching 9 feet or so, and Harry's father saw him one day in the street, walking along the street at Broad and Market, and he got so excited he ran over to the tall man, and he took a shoelace off his own shoe, measured the guy's hand right out there on the street, and he went home and made up a perfect size 17 pair of gloves. Harry's father cut it, his mom sewed it, and they went over to the circus, gave the gloves to the tall man, and the whole family got free seats. And a big story about Harry's dad ran in the Newark News the next day. Harry corrected him. The Star Eagle. Right, before it merged with the Ledger. "Wonderful," the girl said, laughing. "Your father must have been very skilled." "Couldn't speak a word of English," Harry told her. "He couldn't?" "Well, that just goes to show you don't have to know English," she said, "to cut a perfect pair of gloves for a man 9 feet tall." Harry didn't laugh, but the Swede did. Laughed and put his arm around her. "This is Rita. We're going to make her a dress glove, size 4, black or brown, honey." "Brown?" From a wrapped-up bundle of hides dampening beside Harry, he picked out one in a pale shade of brown. "This is a tough color to get," the Swede told her. "British tan. You can see there's all sorts of variation in the color. See how light it is there, how dark it is down there? Okay, this is sheepskin. What you saw in my office was pickled. This has been tanned. This is leather. But you can still see the animal. If you were to look at the animal," he said, "here it is, the head, the butt, the front legs, the hind legs, and here's the back, where the leather is harder and thicker as it is over our own backbones. Honey." He began calling her honey up in the cutting room, and he couldn't stop. And this even before he understood that by standing beside her, he was as close to Mary as he had been since the general store blew up and his honey disappeared. This is a French ruler. It's about an inch longer than an American ruler. This is called a spud knife, dull, beveled to an edge, but not sharp. Now he's pulling the trank down like that to the length again. Harry likes to bet you that he'll pull it right down to the pattern without even touching the pattern, but I don't bet him because I don't like losing. This is called a fourchette. See? All meticulously done. He's going to cut yours and give it to me so we can take it down to the making department. This is called the slitter, honey. Only mechanical process in the whole thing. A press and a die, and the slitter will take about 4 tranks at a time. Wow, this is an elaborate process, said Rita. That it is. It's hard, really, to make money in the glove business because it's so labor-intensive, a time-consuming process, many operations to be coordinated. Most of the glove businesses have been family businesses from father to son, very traditional business. A product is a product to most manufacturers. The guy who makes them doesn't know anything about them. The glove business isn't like that. This business has a long, long history. Do other people feel the romance of the glove business the way you do, Mr. Lvov? You really are mad for this place and all the processes. I guess that's what makes you a happy man. Am I? He asked, and felt as though he were going to be dissected, cut into by a knife, opened up, and all his misery revealed. I guess I am. Are you the last of the Mohegans? No. Most of them, I believe, in this business have that same feeling for the tradition, that same love. Because it does require a love and a legacy to motivate somebody to stay in a business like this. You have to have strong ties to it to be able to stick it out. Come on, he said, having managed momentarily to quash everything that was shadowing him and menacing him, succeeded still to be able to speak with great precision, despite her telling him he was a happy man. Let's go back to the making room. This is the silking. That's a story in itself, but this is what she's going to do first. This is called a piqué machine. It sews the finest stitch, called piqué, requires far more skill than the other stitches. This is called a polishing machine, and that's called a stretcher, and you are called honey, and I am called daddy, and this is called living, and the other is called dying, and this is called madness, and this is called mourning, and this is called hell, pure hell, and you have to have strong ties to be able to stick it out. This is called trying to go on as though nothing has happened, and this is called paying the full price, but in God's name, for what? This is called wanting to be dead and wanting to find her and to kill her and to save her from whatever she is going through, wherever on earth she may be at this moment. This unbridled outpouring is called blotting out everything, and it does not work. I am half insane. The shattering force of that bomb is too great. And then they were back in his office again, waiting for Rita's gloves to come from the finishing department, and he was repeating to her a favorite observation of his father's, one that his father had read somewhere and always used to impress visitors, and he heard himself repeating it word for word as his own. If only he could get her to stay and not go. If he could keep on talking about gloves to her, about gloves, about skins, about his horrible riddle, implore her, beg her, don't leave me alone with this horrible riddle. Monkeys, gorillas, they have brains, and we have a brain, but they don't have this thing, the thumb. They can't move it opposite the way we do. The inner digit on the hand of a man, that might be the distinguishing physical feature between ourselves and the rest of the animals. And the glove protects that inner digit. The lady's glove, the welder's glove, the rubber glove, the baseball glove, etc. This is the root of humanity, this opposable thumb. It enables us to make tools and build cities and everything else more than the brain. Maybe some other animals have bigger brains in proportion to their bodies than we have. I don't know. But the hand itself is an intricate thing. It moves. There is no other part of a human body that is clothed, that is such a complex moving structure. And that was when Vicky popped in the door with the size 4 finished gloves. Here's your pair of gloves, Vicky said, and gave them to the boss, who looked them over and then leaned across the desk to show them to the girl. See the seams? The width of the sewing at the edge of the leather. That's where the quality workmanship is. This margin is probably about a 32nd of an inch between stitching and the edge. And that requires a high skill level, far higher than normal. If a glove isn't well sewn, this edge might come to 1/8 of an inch. It also will not be straight. Look at how straight these seams are. This is why a Newark-made glove is a good glove, Rita, because of the straight seams, because of the fine leather. It's well tanned, it's soft, it's pliable, smells like the inside of a new car. I love good leather. I love fine gloves, and I was brought up on the idea of making the best glove possible. It's in my blood. And nothing gives me greater pleasure. He clutched at his own effusiveness, the way a sick person clutches at any sign of health, no matter how minute. Then giving you these lovely gloves. Here, he said. With our compliments, and smiling, he presented the gloves to the girl, who excitedly pulled them onto her little hands. Slowly, slowly. Always draw on a pair of gloves by the fingers, he told her. Afterward, the thumb, then draw the wrist down in place. Always the first time, draw them on slowly. And she looked up and, smiling back at him with the pleasure that any child takes in receiving a gift, showed him with her hands in the air how beautiful the gloves looked, how beautifully they fit. Close your hand, make a fist, the Swede said. Feel how the glove expands where your hand expands and nicely adjusts to your size. That's what the cutter does when he does his job right. No stretch left in the length. He pulled that all out at the table because you don't want the fingers to stretch. but an exactly measured amount of hidden stretch left in the width. That stretch in the width is a precise calculation. Yes, it's wonderful, absolutely perfect, she told him, opening and closing her hands in turn. God bless the precise calculators of this world, she said, laughing, who leave stretch hidden in the width. And only after Vicky had shut the door to his glass-enclosed office and headed back into the racket of the making department did Rita add, very softly, she wants her Audrey Hepburn scrapbook. The next morning, the Swede met Rita at the Newark Airport parking lot to give her the scrapbook. From his office, he had first driven to Branch Brook Park, miles in the opposite direction from the airport, where he got out of the car to take a solitary walk. He strolled along where the Japanese cherry trees were blooming. For a while, he sat on a bench watching the old people with their dogs. Then, back in the car, he just began to drive, through Italian North Newark and on up to Belleville, making right turns for half an hour until he determined that he wasn't being followed. Rita had warned him not to make his way to their rendezvous otherwise. The second week, at the airport parking lot, he handed over the ballet slippers and the leotard Mary had last worn at age 14. 3 days after that, it was his stuttering diary. Surely, he said, having decided that now, with the diary in his hands, the time had come to repeat the words his wife had spoken to him before each of his meetings with Rita. Meetings in which he had scrupulously done nothing other than what Rita asked and deliberately asked nothing of her in return. Surely, you can now tell me something about Mary, if not where she is, how she is. I surely cannot, Rita said sourly. I'd like to speak with her. Well, she won't like to speak with you. But if she wants these things, why else would she want these things? Because they're hers. So are we hers, miss. Not to hear her tell it, I can't believe that. She hates you. Does she? He asked lightly. She thinks you ought to be shot. Yes, that too. What do you pay the workers in your factory in Ponce, Puerto Rico? What do you pay the workers who stitch gloves for you in Hong Kong and Taiwan? What do you pay the women going blind in the Philippines hand-stitching designs to satisfy the ladies shopping at Bonwitz? You're nothing but a shitty little capitalist who exploits the brown and yellow people of the world and lives in luxury behind the nigger-proof security gates of his mansion. Till now, the Swede had been civil and soft-spoken with Rita no matter how menacing she was determined to be. Rita was all they had. She was indispensable. And though he didn't expect to change her any by keeping his emotions to himself, each time he steeled himself to show no desperation. Taunting him was the project she had set herself. Imposing her will on this conservatively dressed success story, 6 feet 3 inches tall and worth millions, clearly provided her with one of life's great moments. But then it was all great moments these days. They had Mary, 16-year-old stuttering Mary. They had a live human being and her family to play with. Rita was no longer an ordinary, wavering mortal, let alone a novice in life, but a creature in clandestine harmony with the brutal way of the world, entitled, in the name of historical justice, to be just as sinister as the capitalist oppressor Swede Lvov. The unreality of being in the hands of this child. This loathsome kid with a head full of fantasies about the working class. This tiny being who took up not even as much space in the car as the Lvov sheepdog, pretending that she was striding on the world stage. This utterly insignificant pebble. What was the whole sick enterprise other than angry, infantile egoism thinly disguised as identification with the oppressed? Her weighty responsibility to the workers of the world? Egoistic pathology bristled out of her like the hair that nuttily proclaimed, I go wherever I want, as far as I want, and all that matters is what I want. Yes, the nonsensical hair constituted half of their revolutionary ideology, about as sound a justification for her actions as the other half, the exaggerated jargon about changing the world. She was 22 years old, no more than 5 feet tall, and off on a reckless adventure with a very potent thing way beyond her comprehension called power. Not the least need of thought. Thought just paled away beside their ignorance. They were omniscient without even thinking. No wonder his tremendous effort to hide his agitation was thwarted momentarily by uncontrollable rage. And sharply he said to her, as though he were not joined to her maniacally uncompromising mission in the most unimaginable way, as though it could matter to him that she enjoyed thinking the worst of him, "You have no idea what you're talking about. American firms make gloves in the Philippines and Hong Kong and Taiwan and India and Pakistan and all over the place, but not mine. I own 2 factories. 2. One of my factories you visited in Newark. You saw how unhappy my employees were. That's why they've worked for us for 40 years, because they're exploited so miserably. The factory in Puerto Rico employs 260 people, Miss Cohen. People we have trained from scratch, people we trust, people who, before we came to Ponce, had barely enough work to go around. We furnish employment where there was a shortage of employment. We have taught needle skills to Caribbean people who had few, if any, of these skills. You know nothing. You know nothing about anything. You didn't even know what a factory was till I showed you one." "I know what a plantation is, Mr. Mr. Lvov. I know what it means to run a plantation. You take good care of your niggers. Of course you do. It's called paternal capitalism. You own them, you sleep with them, and when you're finished with them, you toss them out, lynch them only when necessary. Use them for your sport and use them for your profit." Please, I haven't 2 minutes interest in childish cliches. You don't know what a factory is. You don't know what manufacturing is. You don't know what capital is. You don't know what labor is. You haven't the faintest idea what it is to be employed or what it is to be unemployed. You have no idea what work is. You've never held a job in your life, and if you even cared to find one, you wouldn't last a single day, not as a worker, not as a manager, not as an owner. Enough nonsense. I want you to tell me where my daughter is. That is all I want to hear from you. She needs help. She needs serious help, not ridiculous cliches. I want you to tell me where I can find her. Mary never wants to see you again, or that mother. You don't know anything about Mary's mother. Lady Dawn of the Manor. I know all there is to know about Lady Dawn. So ashamed of her class origins, she has to make her daughter into a debutante. Mary shoveled cow shit from the time she was 6. You don't know what you're talking about. Mary was into 4-H club. Mary rode tractors. Mary, fake, all fake. The daughter of the beauty queen and the captain of the football team. What kind of nightmare is that for a girl with a soul? The little shirt-waist dresses, the little shoes, the little this and the little that. Always playing with her hair. You think she wanted to fix Mary's hair because she loved her and the way she looked, or because she was disgusted with her? Disgusted she couldn't have a baby beauty queen that could grow up in her own image to become Miss Rimrock? Mary was to have dancing lessons. Mary was to have tennis lessons. I'm surprised she didn't get a nose job. You don't know what you're talking about. Why do you think Mary had the hots for Audrey Hepburn? Because she thought that was the best chance she had with that vain little mother of hers, Miss Vanity of 1949. Hard to believe you could fit so much vanity into that cutesy figure. Oh, but it does. It fits all right. Just doesn't leave much room for Mary, does it? You don't know what you're saying. No imagination for somebody who isn't beautiful and lovable and desirable. None. The frivolous, trivial beauty queen mentality, and no imagination for her own daughter. I don't want to see anything messy. I don't want to see anything dark. But the world isn't like that, Dawny dear. It is messy. It is dark. It's hideous. Mary's mother works a farm all day. She works with animals all day. She works with farm machinery all day. She works from 6 a.m. to fake. She works a farm like a fucking upper class. You don't know anything about any of this. Where's my daughter? Where is she? The conversation is pointless. Where's Mary? You don't remember the "now you are a woman" party to celebrate her first menstruation? We're not talking about any party. What party? We're talking about the humiliation of a daughter by her beauty queen mother. We're talking about a mother who completely colonized her daughter's self-image. We're talking about a mother who didn't have an inch of feeling for her daughter, who has about as much depth as those gloves you make. A whole family, and all you really fucking care about is skin, ectoderm, surface. But what's underneath? You don't have a clue. You think that was real affection she had for that stuttering girl? She tolerated that stuttering girl, but you can't tell the difference between affection and tolerance because you're too stupid yourself. Another one of your fucking fairy tales. A menstruation party? A party for Jesus? You mean, no, that wasn't that. The party? You mean when she took all her friends to White House for dinner? That was her 12th birthday. What is this? Now you are a woman, crap. It was a birthday party. Nothing to do with menstruating. Nothing. Who told you this? Mary didn't tell you this. I remember that party. She remembers that party. It was a simple birthday party. We took all those girls down to that restaurant in White House. They had a wonderful time. We had 10, 12-year-old girls. This is all crack. Somebody is dead. My daughter is being accused of murder. Rita was laughing. Mr. Law-abiding New Jersey fucking citizen, a little bit of fake affection looks just like love to him. But what you're describing never happened. What you're saying never happened. It would have mattered if it did, but it didn't. Don't you know what's made Mary Mary? 16 years of living in a household where she was hated by that mother. For what? Tell me. Hated her for what? Because she was everything Lady Dawn wasn't. Her mother hated her, Swede. It's a shame you're so late in finding out. Hated her for not being petite, for not being able to have her hair pulled back in that oh-so-spiffy country way. Mary was hated with that hatred that seeps into you like toxin. Lady Dawn couldn't have done a better job if she slipped poison into her a meal at a time. Lady Dawn would look at her with that look of hatred, and Mary was turned into a piece of shit. That was no look of hatred. Something may have gone wrong, but that wasn't it. That wasn't hatred. I know what she's talking about. What you're calling hatred was her mother's anxiety. I know the look. But it was about the stuttering. My God, it wasn't hatred. It was the opposite. It was concern. It was distress. It was helplessness. Still protecting that wife of yours, said Rita, laughing at him again. Incredible incomprehension. Simply incredible. You know why else she hated her? She hated her because she's your daughter. It's all fine and well for Miss New Jersey to marry a Jew, but to raise a Jew? That's a whole other bag of tricks. You have a shiksa wife, Swede, but you didn't get a shiksa daughter. Miss New Jersey is a bitch, Swede. Mary would have been better off sucking the cows if she wanted a little milk and nurturance. At least the cows have maternal feelings. He had allowed her to talk. He had allowed himself to listen only because he wanted to know. If something had gone wrong, of course, he wanted to know. What is the grudge? What is the grievance? That was the central mystery. How did Mary get to be who she is? But none of this explained anything. This couldn't be what it was all about. This couldn't be what lay behind the blowing up of the building, no. A desperate man was giving himself over to a treacherous girl, not because she could possibly begin to know what went wrong, but because there was no one else to give himself over to. He felt less like someone looking for an answer than like someone mimicking someone who was looking for an answer. This whole exchange had been a ridiculous mistake. To expect this kid to talk to him truthfully, she couldn't insult him enough. Everything about their lives transformed absolutely by her hatred. Here was the hater, this insurrectionist child. Where is she? Why do you want to know where she is? I want to see her, he said. Why? She's my daughter. Somebody is dead. My daughter is being accused of murder. You're really stuck on that, aren't you? Do you know how many Vietnamese have been killed in the few minutes we've had the luxury to talk about whether or not Donnie loves her daughter? It's all relative, Swede. Death is all relative. Where is she? Your daughter is safe. Your daughter is loved. Your daughter is fighting for what she believes in. Your daughter is finally having an experience of the world. Where is she, damn you? She's not a possession, you know. She's not property. She's not powerless anymore. You don't own Mary the way you owned your old Rimrock house and your Deal house and your Florida condo and your Newark factory and your Puerto Rican factory and your Puerto Rican workers and all your Mercedes and all your Jeeps and all your beautiful handmade suits. You know what I've come to realize about you kindly rich liberals who own the world? Nothing is further from your understanding than the nature of reality. No one begins like this, the Swede thought. This can't be what she is. This bullying infant, this obnoxious, stubborn, angry, bullying infant cannot be my daughter's protector. She's a jailer. Mary, with all her intelligence, under the spell of this childlike cruelty and meanness. There's more human sense in one page of the stuttering diary than in all the sadistic idealism in this reckless child's head. Oh, to crush that hairy, tough little skull of hers right now between his two strong hands, to squeeze it until all the vicious ideas come streaming from her nose. How does a child get to be like this? Can anyone be utterly without thoughtfulness? The answer is yes. His only contact with his daughter was this child who didn't know anything and wouldn't say anything and more than likely do anything, resort to anything to excite herself. Her opinions were all stimuli. The goal was excitement. The paragon, Rita said, speaking to him out of the side of her mouth, as though that would make it all the easier to wreck his life. The cherished and triumphant paragon, who is in actuality the criminal, the great Swede Lvov, all-American capitalist criminal. She was some clever child crackpot, gorging herself on an escapade entirely her own, a reprehensible child lunatic who'd never laid eyes on Mary except in the paper. Some politicized crazy was what she was. The streets of New York were full of them, a criminally insane Jewish kid who picked up her facts about their lives from the newspapers and the TV and from the school friends of Mary's who were all out peddling the same quotation. Quaint old Rimrock is in for a big surprise. From the sound of it, Mary had gone around school the day before the bombing telling that to 400 kids. That was the evidence against her. All these kids on TV claiming they heard her say it. That hearsay and her disappearance were the whole of the evidence. The post office had been blown up, and the general store along with it, but nobody had seen her anywhere near it. Nobody had seen her do the thing. Nobody would have even thought of her as the bomber if she hadn't disappeared. She's been tricked. For days, Dawn went around the house crying, she's been abducted, she's been tricked. She's somewhere right now being brainwashed. Why does everybody say she did it? Nobody had any contact with her. She's not connected with it in any way at all. How can they believe this of a child? Dynamite? What does Mary have to do with dynamite? No, it isn't true. Nobody knows a thing. You should have informed the FBI of Rita Cohen's visit the day she'd come to ask for the scrapbook. At the very least, should have demanded proof from her of Mary's existence. And he should have taken into his confidence someone other than Dawn. Formulated strategy with a person less likely to kill herself if he proceeded other than as her desperation demanded. Answering the needs of a wife incoherent with grief, in no condition to think or act except out of hysteria, was an inexcusable error. He should have heeded his mistrust and contacted immediately the agents who had interviewed him and Dawn at the house the day after the bombing. He should have picked up the phone the moment he understood who Rita Cohen was, even while she was seated in his office. But instead, he had driven directly home from the office, and because he could never calculate a decision free of its emotional impact on those who claimed his love, because seeing them suffer was his greatest hardship, because ignoring their importuning and defying their expectations, even when they wouldn't argue reasonably or to the point, seemed to him an illegitimate use of his superior strength, because he could not disillusion anyone about the kind of selfless son, husband, and father he was, because he had come so highly recommended to everyone. He sat across from Dawn at the kitchen table, watching her deliver a long, sob-racked, half-demented speech, a plea to tell the FBI nothing. Dawn begged him to do whatever the girl wanted. It remained possible for Mary to go unapprehended if only they kept her out of sight until the destruction of the store and the death of Dr. Conlon had been forgotten. If only they hid her somewhere, provided for her, maybe even in another country, until this war-mad witch hunt was over and a new time had begun. Then she could be treated fairly for something she never could have done. She's been tricked. And he believed this himself. What else could a father believe? Until he heard it day after day, 100 times a day, from Dawn. So he had turned over the Audrey Hepburn scrapbook, the leotard, the ballet slippers, the stuttering book. And now he was to meet Rita Cohen at a room in the New York Hilton, this time bearing $5,000 in unmarked 20s and 10s. And just as he'd known to call the FBI when she asked for the scrapbook, he now understood that if he acceded any further to her malicious daring, there'd be no bottom to it. There'd be only misery on a scale incomprehensible to all of them. With the scrapbook, the leotard, the ballet slippers, and the stuttering book, he had been craftily set up. Now for the disastrous payoff. But Dawn was convinced that if he traveled over to Manhattan, got himself lost in the crowds, then, at the appointed afternoon hour, certain he wasn't being tailed, made his way to the hotel, Mary herself would be there waiting for him. An absurd fairy tale hope for which there wasn't a shred of justification, but which he didn't have the heart to oppose, not when he saw his wife shedding another layer of sanity whenever the telephone rang. For the first time, she was got up in a skirt and blouse, gaudily floral bargain basement stuff, and wearing high-heeled pumps. When she unsteadily crossed the carpet in them, she looked tinier even than she had in her work boots. The hairdo was as aboriginal as before, but her face, ordinarily a little pot, soulless and unadorned, had been emblazoned with lipstick and painted with eyeshadow, her cheekbones highlighted with pink grease. She looked like a third grader who had ransacked her mother's room, except that the cosmetics caused her expressionlessness to seem even more frighteningly psychopathic than when her face was just unhumanly empty of color. "I have the money," he said, standing in the hotel room doorway towering above her, and knowing that what he was doing was as wrong as it could be. "I have the money," he repeated, and prepared himself for the retort about the sweat and the blood of the workers from whom he had stolen it. "Oh, hi, do come in," the girl said. "I'd like you to meet my parents. Mom and Dad, this is Seymour." An act for the factory, an act for the hotel. "Please, do come in. Do make yourself at home." He had the money packed into his briefcase, not just the $5,000 in the 10s and 20s she asked for, but $5,000 more in 50s, a total of $10,000, and with no idea why. What good would any of it do Mary? Mary wouldn't see a penny of it still. He said yet again, summoning all his strength so as not to lose hold, "I've brought the money you requested." He was trying hard to continue to exist as himself, despite the unlikeliness of everything. She had moved on to the bedspread and, with her legs crossed at the ankle and 2 pillows propped up behind her head, began lightly to sing, oh, Lydia, my encyclopedia, oh, Lydia, the tattooed lady." It was one of the old silly songs he taught his little daughter. Once they saw that singing, she could always be fluent. "Come to fuck Rita Cohen, have you?" "I've come," he said, "to deliver the money." "Let's fuck, Dad." If you have any feeling for what everyone is going through, come off it, Swede. What do you know about feeling? Why are you treating us like this? Boo-hoo, tell me another. You came here to fuck me. Ask anybody. Why does a middle-aged capitalist dog come to a hotel room to meet a young piece of ass to fuck her? Say it, just say it. I came to fuck you good. Say it, Swede. I don't want to say any such thing. Stop all of this, please. I'm 22 years old. I do everything. I do it all. Say it, Swede. Could this lead to Mary? This onslaught of sneering and mockery? She couldn't insult him enough. Was she impersonating someone, acting from a script prepared beforehand? Or was he dealing with a person who couldn't be dealt with because she was mad? She was like a gang member. Was she the gang leader, this tiny white-faced thug? In a gang, the authority is given to the one who is most ruthless. Is she the most ruthless? Or are there others who are worse? Those others who are holding Mary captive right now. Maybe she's the most intelligent, their actress. Maybe she's the most corrupt, their budding whore. Maybe there's all a game to them, middle-class kids out on a spree. "Don't I suit you?" she asked. "No crude desires in a big guy like you? Come on, I'm not such a frightening person. You can't have met your match in little me. Look at you like a naughty boy. A child in terror of being disgraced. Isn't there anything else in there except your famous purity?" "I bet there is. I bet you've got yourself quite a pillar in there," she said. "The pillar of society." "What's the aim of all this talk? Will you tell me?" "The aim? Sure. To introduce you to reality. That's the aim." "And how much ruthlessness is necessary?" "To introduce you to reality? To get you to admire reality? To get you to partake of reality? To get you out there on the frontiers of reality? It ain't going to be no picnic, Jocko." He had braced himself not to become entangled in her loathing for him, not to be affronted by anything she said. He was prepared for the verbal violence and prepared, this time, not to react. She wasn't unintelligent, and she wasn't afraid to say anything. He knew that much. But what he had not counted on was lust, an urge. He hadn't counted on being assailed by something other than the verbal violence. Despite the repugnance inspired by the sickly whiteness of her flesh, by the comically childish makeup and the cheap cotton clothes, half reclining on the bed was a young woman half reclining on a bed, and the Swede himself, the Superman of certainties, was one of the people whom he could not deal with. "Poor thing," she said scornfully. "Little rimrock rich boy, all locked up like that. Let's fuck, Daddy. I'll take you to see your daughter. We'll wash your prick and zip up your fly, and I'll take you to where she is." "Do I know you will? How do I know you will?" "Wait. See how things turn out. The worst is you get yourself some 22-year-old gash. Come on, Dad. Come on over to the bed. Stop this. My daughter has nothing to do with any of this. My daughter has nothing to do with you, you little shit. You're not fit to wipe my daughter's shoes. My daughter had nothing to do with that bombing. You know that." "Calm down, Swede. Calm down, lover boy. If you want to see your daughter as much as you say, you'll just calm down and you'll come on over here and give Rita Cohen a nice big buck. First the fuck, then the dough." She had raised her knees toward her chest, and now, with either foot planted on the bed, she let her legs fall open. The floral skirt was gathered up by her hips, and she wore no underwear. "There," she said softly. "Put it right there. Attack there. It's all permissible, baby." Miss Cohen. He didn't know what to reach for in his estimable strongbox of reactions. This boiling up of something so visceral in with the rhetorical was not the attack he had prepared himself for. She'd brought to the hotel a stick of dynamite to throw. This was it. To blow him up. "What is it, dear?" she replied. "You must speak up like a big boy if you wish to be heard." "What does this display have to do with what has happened?" "Everything," she said. "You'll be surprised by what a very clear picture of things you're going to get from this display." She edged her two hands down onto her pubic hair. "Look at it," she told him, and by rolling the labial lips outward with her fingers, exposed to him the membranous tissue, veined and mottled and waxy with the moist tulip sheen of flayed flesh. He looked away. "It's a jungle down there," she said. "Nothing in its place, nothing on the left side like anything on the right side. How many extras are there? Nobody knows, too many to count. There are glands down there. There's another hole. There are flaps. Don't you see what this has to do with what happened? Take a look. Take a good, long look." "Miss Cohen," he said, fixing on her eyes, the one mark of beauty she was blessed with. A child's eyes, he discovered, a good child's eyes that had nothing in common with what she was up to. "My daughter is missing. Someone is dead." "You don't get the point. You don't get the point about anything. Look at it. Describe it to me. Have I got it wrong? What do you see? Do you see anything?" "No, you don't see anything. You don't see anything because you don't look at anything." "This makes no sense," he said. "You are subjugating no one by this, only yourself. You know what size it is? Let's see what kind of guesser you are. It's small. I'm guessing that it's a size 4. In a lady's size, that's as small as cunts come. Anything smaller is a child's. Let's see how you'll fit into a teeny size 4. Let's see if a size 4 doesn't provide just the nicest, warmest, snuggest fuck you've ever dreamed of fucking. You love good leather, you love fine gloves. Stick it in, but slowly, slowly. Always the first time, stick it in slowly. Why don't you stop right now?" "Okay, if that's your decision, that you're such a brave man you won't even look at it, shut your eyes and step right up and smell it. Step right up and take a whiff. The swamp, it sucks you, and smell it, Swede. You know what a glove smells like? It smells like the inside of a new car. Well, this is what life smells like. Smell this. Smell the inside of a brand new pussy." Her dark child's eyes, full of excitement and fun, full of audacity, full of unreasonableness, full of oddness, full of Rita. And only half of it was performance to agitate, to infuriate, to arouse. She was in an altered state, the imp of upheaval, the genie of disaster, as though, in being his tormentor and wrecking his family, she had found the malicious meaning for her own existence. Kid mayhem. "Your physical restraint is amazing," she said. "Isn't there anything that can get you off dead center? I don't believe there are any left like you. Any other man would have been overcome by his hard-on hours ago. You are a throwback. Taste it." "You're not a woman. This doesn't make you a woman in any way. This makes you a travesty of a woman. This is loathsome," rapidly firing back at her like a soldier under attack. "And a man who won't look, what's he a travesty of?" she asked him. "Isn't it just human nature to look? What about a man always averting his eyes because it's all too steeped in reality for him? Because nothing is in harmony with the world as he knows it, thinks he knows it, tastes it. Of course it's loathsome, you great big Boy Scout. I'm depraved." And merrily laughing off his refusal to lower his gaze by so much as an inch, she cried, "Here!" She must have reached inside herself with a hand. Her hand must have disappeared inside her, because a moment later it was the whole of her hand that she was extending upward to him. The tips of her fingers bore the smell of her right up to him. That he couldn't shut out. The fecund smell released from within. "This will unlock the mystery. You want to know what this has to do with what happened?" she said. "This will tell you." There was so much emotion in him, so much uncertainty, so much inclination and counter-inclination. He was bursting so with impulse and counter-impulse that he could no longer tell which of them had drawn the line that he would not pass over. All his thinking seemed to be taking place in a foreign language, but still he knew not to pass over the line. He wouldn't pick her up and hurl her against the window. He wouldn't pick her up and throw her onto the floor. He wouldn't pick her up for any reason. All the strength left in him would be marshaled to keep him paralyzed at the foot of the bed. He would not go near her. The hand she offered him she now carried slowly up to her face, making loony, comical little circles in the air as she approached her mouth. Then, one by one, she slipped each finger between her lips to cleanse it. "You know what it tastes like? Want me to tell you? It tastes like your daughter." Here he bolted the room with all his strength. That was it. 10, 12 minutes, and it was over. By the time the FBI responded to his phone call and got to the hotel, she was gone, as was the briefcase he had abandoned. He bolted not from the childlike cruelty and meanness, not even from the vicious provocation, but from something that he could no longer name. Faced with something he could not name, he had done everything wrong. 5 years pass. In vain, the Rimrock bomber's father waits for Rita to reappear at his office. He didn't take a photograph, didn't save her fingerprints. No, whenever they met, for those few minutes, she, a child, was boss. And now she's disappeared. With an agent and a sketch artist to assist him, he's asked to construct a picture of Rita for the FBI. While alone, he studies the daily paper and the weekly news magazines, searching for the real thing. He waits for Rita's picture to turn up. She's bound to be there. Bombs are going off everywhere. In Boulder, Colorado, bombs destroy a selective service office and the ROTC headquarters at the University of Colorado. In Michigan, there are explosions at the university and dynamite attacks on a police headquarters and the draft board. In Wisconsin, a bomb destroys a National Guard armory. A small plane flies over and drops 2 jars filled with gunpowder on an ammunition plant. College buildings are attacked with bombs at the University of Wisconsin. In Chicago, a bomb destroys the memorial statue to the policeman killed in the Haymarket riots. In New Haven, someone firebombs the home of the judge in the trial of 19 Black Panthers, accused of planning to destroy department stores, the police station, and the New Haven Railroad. Buildings are bombed at universities in Oregon, Missouri, and Texas. A Pittsburgh shopping mall, a Washington nightclub, a Maryland courtroom, all bombed. In New York, there are a series of explosions. At the United Fruit Line Pier, at the Marine Midland Bank, at Manufacturers Trust, at General Motors, at the Manhattan headquarters of Mobil Oil, IBM, and General Telephone and Electronics. A downtown Manhattan Selective Service Center is bombed. The Criminal Courts building is bombed. 3 Molotov cocktails go off in a Manhattan high school. Bombs explode in safe deposit boxes in banks in 8 cities. She has to have set off one of them. They'll find Rita. Catch her red-handed, catch the whole bunch of them, and she will lead them to Mary. In his pajamas in their kitchen, He sits, watching every night for her soot-covered face at the window. He sits alone in the kitchen, waiting for his enemy, Rita Cohen, to return. A TWA jet is bombed in Las Vegas. A bomb goes off on the Queen Elizabeth. A bomb goes off in the Pentagon, in a woman's restroom on the 4th floor of an Air Force area of the Pentagon. The bomber leaves a note. Today we attacked the Pentagon, the center of the American Military Command. We're reacting at a time when growing U.S. air and naval shelling are being carried out against the Vietnamese, while U.S. mines and warships are used to block the harbors of the Democratic Republic of Vietnam, while plans for even more escalation are being made in Washington. The Democratic Republic of Vietnam? If I hear that from her once again, Seymour, I swear I'll go out of my mind. It's their daughter. Mary has bombed the Pentagon. Dad, above the noise of the sewing machines, he hears her crying for him in his office. Daddy. 2 years after her disappearance, there's a bomb blast in the most elegant Greek Revival house on the most peaceful residential street in Greenwich Village. 3 explosions and a fire destroy the old 4-story brick townhouse. The house is owned by a prosperous New York couple who are on vacation in the Caribbean. After the explosion, 2 dazed young women stumble, bruised and lacerated, out of the building. One of them, who is naked, is described as being between 16 and 18. The 2 are sheltered by a neighbor. She gives them clothes to wear, but while the neighbor rushes off to the bombed-out building to see what more she can do, the 2 young women disappear. One is the 25-year-old daughter of the owners of the townhouse, a member of a violent revolutionary faction of the Students for a Democratic Society called the Weathermen. The other is unidentified. The other is Rita. The other is Mary. They've roped her into this, too. He waits all night in his kitchen for his daughter and the girl Weatherman. It's safe now. The surveillance of the house, of the factory, the monitoring of the phones were dropped more than a year before. It's okay now to show up. He defrosts some soup to feed them. He thinks back to when she had begun to lean toward the sciences. Because of Dawn's cattle, she thought she'd be a vet. It was the stuttering, too, that sent her into the sciences, because when she was focused and concentrated on one of her science projects, doing close work, the stuttering always abated a little. No parent in the world could have seen the connection to a bomb. Everyone would have missed it, not just them. Her interest in science was totally innocent. Everything was. The body of a young man found in the rubble of the burned-out house is identified the next day as that of a one-time Columbia student, a veteran of violent anti-war demonstrations, the founder of a radical SDS splinter group, the Mad Dogs. The following day, the second young woman who fled the bomb scene is identified, another radical activist, but not Mary, the 26-year-old daughter of a left-wing New York lawyer. Even worse is news of another corpse discovered in the rubble at the village townhouse, the torso of a young woman. The body of the second victim of the blast was not immediately identified, and Dr. Elliot Gross, associate medical examiner, said, "It will take some time before we have any idea who she is." Alone at the kitchen table, her father knows who she is. 60 sticks of dynamite, 30 blasting caps, a cache of homemade bombs, 12-inch pipes packed with dynamite are found only 20 feet from the body. It was a pipe packed with dynamite that blew up Hamlin's. She was putting the components of a new bomb together, did something wrong, and blew up the townhouse. First Hamlin's, now herself. She did do it. Gave the quaint town its big surprise, and this is the result. Dr. Gross confirmed that the torso had a number of puncture wounds caused by nails, giving credence to the report from the police source that the bombs were apparently being wrapped to act more as anti-personnel weapons than just as explosive devices. The next day, more explosions are reported in Manhattan. 3 Midtown buildings bombed simultaneously at about 1:40 a.m. The torso, not hers. Mary is alive. Hers is not the body skewered by nails and blown apart. As a result of the telephone warning, police arrived at the building at 1:20 and evacuated 24 janitors and other workers before the explosion occurred. The Midtown bomber and the Rimrock bomber must be one and the same. Had she known enough to telephone before her first bomb was set off, no one would have been killed and she would not be wanted for murder. So at least she's learned something. At least she's alive. And there's reason to be sitting every night in the kitchen waiting to see her at the window with Rita. He reads about the parents of the 2 young women who are missing and wanted for questioning in the townhouse explosion. The mother and father of one of them appealed to their daughter on television to disclose how many people were in the building when it exploded. If there were no others, the mother says, the search could be called off until the surrounding walls are removed. I believe in you, the mother tells the missing daughter, who, with SDS comrades, used the house as a bomb factory, and know that you would not wish to add more sorrow to this tragedy. Please, please, telephone or wire or have someone call for you with this information. There's nothing else we need to know except that you're safe, and nothing we need to say except that we love you and want desperately to help. The very words spoken to the press and television by the father of the Rimrock bomber when she disappeared. We love you and want to help. Asked if he had been communicating well with his daughter, the father of the townhouse bomber replied, and no less truthfully or miserably than the father of the Rimrock bomber answering a similar question, as parents, we'd have to say no, not in recent years. His daughter is quoted by him as fighting for what Mary, too, in her dinner table outburst decrying her selfish mother and father and their bourgeois life, proclaimed as the motive for her own struggle: to change the system and give power to the 90% of the people who have no economic or political control now. The father of the other missing girl is said by the police investigator to be very uncommunicative. He says only, I have no knowledge concerning her whereabouts. And the father of the Rimrock bomber believes him, understands his uncommunicativeness all too well, knows better than any other father in America the burden of anguish concealed by the emotionless formulation, I have no knowledge concerning her whereabouts. If it hadn't happened to him, he would probably have marveled at the tight-lipped facade. But he knows the truth is that the missing girl's parents are drowning, exactly as he is drowning day and night in inadequate explanations. A third body is found in the townhouse rubble, the body of an adult male. Then, a week later, a statement appears in the paper, attributed to the mother of the second missing girl, that dissipates his compassion for both sets of parents. Asked about her daughter, the mother says, we know she is safe. Their daughter has killed 3 people, and they know she is safe. While about his daughter, who has not been proved by anyone to have killed anybody, about his daughter, who is being used by radical little thugs, just like these privileged townhouse bombers, who has been framed, who is innocent, he knows nothing. What has he got to do with them? His daughter didn't do it. She no more set off the bomb at Hamlin's than she set off the bomb in the Pentagon. Since '68, thousands of bombs have been exploded in America, and his daughter has had nothing to do with a single one of them. How does he know? Because Dawn knows. Because Dawn knows for sure. Because if their daughter had been going to do it, she would never have gone around school telling kids that the town of Old Rimrock was in for a big surprise. Their daughter was too smart for that. If she had been going to do it, she would have said nothing. 5 years pass. 5 years searching for an explanation, going back over everything, over the circumstances that shaped her, the people and the events that influenced her, and none of it adequate to begin to explain the bombing until he remembers the Buddhist monks. The self-immolation of the Buddhist monks. Of course, she was just 10 then, maybe 11 years old, and in the years between then and now a million things had happened to her, to them, to the world. Though she had been terrified for weeks afterward, crying about what had appeared on television that night, talking about it, awakened from her sleep by dreaming about it, it hardly stopped her in her tracks. And yet, when he remembers her sitting there and seeing that monk going up in flames, as unprepared as the rest of the country for what she was seeing, a kid half watching the news with her mother and father one night after dinner, he's sure he's unearthed the reason for what happened. was back in 62 or 63, around the time of the Kennedy assassination, before the war in Vietnam had begun in earnest, when, as far as everybody knew, America was merely at the periphery of whatever was going haywire over there. The monk who did it was in his 70s, thin, with a shaved head and wearing a saffron robe, cross-legged and straight-backed on an empty city street somewhere in South Vietnam, gracefully seated like that in front of a crowd of monks who had gathered to witness the event as though to observe a religious ritual. The monk had upended a large plastic canister, poured the gasoline or the kerosene, whatever it was, out of the canister and over himself, and drenched the asphalt around him. Then he struck the match, and a nimbus of ragged flames came roiling out of him. There is sometimes a performer in a circus, advertised as the fire eater, who makes flames seemingly shoot out of his mouth, and there on the street of some city in South Vietnam, this shaven-headed monk somehow made it look as though flames, instead of assaulting him from without, were shooting forward into the air from within him, not just from his mouth, however, but in an instantaneous eruption from his scalp and his face and his chest and his lap and his legs and his feet. Because he remained perfectly upright, indicating in no way that he could feel himself to be on fire, because he did not so much as move a muscle, let alone cry out, it at first looked very much like a circus stunt, as though what was being consumed were not the monk but the air, the monk setting the air on fire while no harm at all befell him. His posture remained exemplary, the posture of someone altogether elsewhere leading another life entirely, a servant of selfless contemplation, meditative, serene, a mere link in the chain of being untouched by what happened to be happening to him within view of the entire world. No screaming, no writhing, just his calmness at the heart of the flames. No pain registering on anyone on camera, only on Mary and the Swede and Dawn, horrified together in their living room. Out of nowhere and into their home, the nimbus of flames, the upright monk, and the sudden liquefaction before he keels over. Into their home, all these other monks, seated along the curbstone, impassively looking on, a few with their hands pressed together before them in the Asian gesture of peace and unity. Into their home on Arcady Hill Road, the charred and blackened corpse on its back in that empty street. That was what had done it. Into their home, the monk came to stay. The Buddhist monk, calmly sitting out his burning up as though he were a man both fully alert and anesthetized. The television transmitting the immolation must have done it. If their set had happened to be tuned to another channel or turned off or broken, if they had all been out together as a family for the evening, Mary would have never seen what she shouldn't have seen and would never have done what she shouldn't have done. What other explanation was there? These gentle people, she said, while the Swede gathered her into his lap. A lanky 11-year-old girl held her to him, rocking and rocking her in his arms. These gentle people. At first, she was so frightened she couldn't even cry. She could get out of her just those 3 words. Only later, a moment after going to bed, when she got up and with a yelp ran from her room down the corridor into the room and asked, as she hadn't since she was 5, to get into bed with them, was she able to let everything out of her, everything awful that she was thinking. All the lights remained on in their bedroom, and they let her go on and on, sitting up between them in their bed and talking until there were no words left inside her to panic or terrorize. When she fell asleep, sometime after 3, it was with their lights all still burning. She wouldn't let him turn them off. But she had at least by then talked herself out enough and cried herself out enough to succumb to her exhaustion. Do you have to melt yourself down in fire to bring people to their senses? Does anybody care? Does anybody have a conscience? Doesn't anybody in this world have a conscience left? Every time conscience crossed her lips, she began to cry. What could they tell her? How could they answer her? Yes, some people have a conscience. Many people have a conscience. But unfortunately, there are people who don't have a conscience. That's true. You're lucky, Mary. You have a very well-developed conscience. It's admirable for someone your age to have such a conscience. We're proud of having a daughter who has so much conscience and who cares so much about the well-being of others and who's able to sympathize with the suffering of others. She couldn't sleep alone in her room for a week. The Swede carefully read the papers in order to be able to explain to her why the monk had done what he did. It had to do with the South Vietnamese president, General Diem. It had to do with corruption, with elections, with the complex regional and political conflicts. It had to do with something about Buddhism itself. But for her, it had only to do with the extremes to which gentle people have to resort in a world where the great majority are without an ounce of conscience. Just when she seemed to have gotten over the self-immolation of that elderly Buddhist monk on that street in South Vietnam and began to be able to sleep in her own room and without a light on and without awakening screaming 2 and 3 times a night, it happened again. Another monk in Vietnam set himself on fire, then a third, then a fourth. And once that started up, he found that he couldn't keep her away from the television set. If she missed his self-immolation on the evening news, she got up early to see it on the morning news before she left for school. They didn't know how to stop her. What was she doing by watching and watching as though she intended never to stop watching? He wanted her to be not upset, but not to be not upset like this. Was she simply trying to make sense of it, to master her fear of it? Was she trying to figure out what it was like to be able to do something like that to yourself? Was she imagining herself as one of these monks? Was she watching because she was still appalled, or was she watching now because she was excited? What was starting to unsettle him, to frighten him, was the idea that Mary was less horrified now than curious. And soon he himself became obsessed, though not like her by the self-immolators in Vietnam, but by the change of demeanor in his 11-year-old. That she'd always wanted to know things had made him tremendously proud of her from the time she was small. But did he really want her to want to know so much about something like this? Is it a sin to take your own life? How can the others stand by and just watch? Why don't they stop him? Why don't they put out the flames? They stand by and let it be televised. They want it televised. Where has their morality gone? What about the morality of the television crews who are doing the filming? Were these the questions she was asking herself? Were they a necessary part of her intellectual development? He didn't know. She watched in total silence, as still as the monk at the center of the flames, and afterwards she would say nothing. Even if he spoke to her, questioned her, she just sat transfixed before that set for minutes on end, her gaze focused somewhere else than on the flickering screen, focused inward where the coherence and the certainty was supposed to be, where everything she did not know was initiating a gigantic upheaval, where nothing that registered would ever fade away. Though he didn't know how to stop her, he did try to find ways to divert her attention, to make her forget this madness that was going on halfway around the world for reasons having nothing to do with her or her family. He took her at night to drive golf balls with him. He took her to a couple of Yankee games. He took her and Dawn for a quick trip down to the factory in Puerto Rico and a week of vacation in Ponce by the beach. And then, one day, she did forget. But not because of anything he had done. It had to do with the immolations. They stopped. There were 5, 6, 7 immolations, and then there were no more. And shortly thereafter, Mary did become herself again, thinking again about things immediate to her daily life and more appropriate to her years. When this South Vietnamese President Diem, the man against whom the martyred Buddhist monks had been directing their protest, when some months later he was assassinated, according to a CBS Sunday morning show, assassinated by the USA, by the CIA, who had propped him up in power in the first place, the news seemed to pass Mary by, and the Swede didn't convey it to her. By then, this place called Vietnam no longer even existed for Mary, if it ever had, except as an alien, unimaginable backdrop for a ghastly TV spectacle that had embedded itself in her impressionable mind when she was 11 years old. She never spoke again of the martyrdom of the Buddhist monks, even after she became so committed to her own political protest. The fate of those monks, back in 1963, appeared to have nothing whatsoever to do with what galvanized into expression, in 1968, a newly hatched vehemence against capitalist America's imperialist involvement in a peasant war of national liberation. And yet, her father spent days and nights trying to convince himself that no other explanation existed. that nothing else sufficiently awful had ever happened to her. Nothing causal, even remotely large enough or shocking enough to explain how his daughter could be the bomber.